welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers. This is a podcast where we talk about tattoos, life, and everything in between. My name is Cal, and this is
Lou. I suddenly just got so itchy.
You got uncomfy?
Just because I'm wearing a hoodie, and I was like, oh, God.
Say happy hoodie, dude.
Hoodie. I don't know yet. It's not
that's
cold
fine.
enough
You're
yet.
good. We will figure it out. Today, we are going to talk about something a little bit heavier. We're going to talk about
weightlifting.
We're going to talk about lifting weights. No.
Lifting.
We're talking about
emotional weights.
Emotional weightlifting. And since this episode is technically in between Mother's Day and Father's Day, look at this cute little mug. We got so excited to show y'all. And before you ask any questions, it's not getting into focus, but yes, there are little nut sacks on those mushroom people. Butts and nut sacks, because, you know, that's just the way to do it.
Butts and nuts.
Butts and nuts.
That's my stripper name.
Butts and nuts is your stripper name?
That'd be a great stripper name.
What did I say? Mine was I said that my drag name was Sofonda Cox.
Yeah.
I stole that from somebody. I think I stole it from Trixie and Katja, but Sofonda Cox is so funny.
Yeah, and I'll be Butts and Nuts.
I like Butts and Nuts. Did you want to introduce this episode?
No.
You're literally so unhinged. I stopped introducing it because you decided to show off your mug. You introduced it.
I got excited. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about stuff and more stuff.
I'm going to fucking fight you. God damn, my coffee's hot. We're going to talk about...
Mine's the perfect temperature, so I can just drink mine.
Are you nervous to talk about this?
No, I just got really hyper. Like, all the carbs from lunch have kicked in.
Sushi?
So now sitting down, I'm like, no, you need to go and move, and you need to wiggle, and you need to play.
Oh,
and
no. It's going to be that kind of
wig.
episode. This one's got the wigs. This episode is launched in between Mother's Day and Father's Day, and as two people who have gone no contact with their parents.
Congratulations.
Thank you. This is the first time I'm publicly saying this. I'm officially no contact out here living. That was so awkward. I got nervous.
I have been no contact with my mother for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
6 years, damn.
Yeah.
Mine's been like a couple weeks or something like that. I don't know.
Yep.
It's been a blur. But we wanted to talk about it just because we know that we're not the only ones who have gone no contact. And we want to do an episode because specifically these holidays can be kind of hard.
So if you're in the U.S., you're right in between Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Mm-hmm.
They are celebrated at different times of the year all around the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now we're right in between those. So if you are still getting over the trauma of Mother's Day, or you're like, oh, fucking shit, now I have to look at Father's Day, we wanted to approach the no contact
and hang out
life
with you because, you know, we get that it can be lonely. Oh no, I think that our microphone is it picking it up? Yes, it is. Sorry, my bad. The ADHD now is hitting so hard. But before we get into the whole Mother's Day and Father's Day thing, let's talk about, we're going to back it up a little bit and talk about why people go no contact. And I don't know if you want to start, if you just want me to take the lead, I can totally start. Because I feel like a lot of people have this idea that like family is everything no matter what, and are confused about why people would ever go no contact with their parents. Personally, I have found myself in patterns of abusive relationships, so I started going to therapy for that. And of course, therapy woke me up to, I shouldn't say woke me up, but it allowed me the tools that I needed to start digging into my childhood and my relationship with, as you like to say, my primary caregivers. Mm-hmm. And that is the foundation to how most of my relationships in my life was going to be set up. Like I was kind of viewing these abusive tendencies as love in my life. And after several instances of conflict that I'm not ready to talk about yet, I've decided to go no contact.
And to be clear, you never have to
Thank you.
state like any of that publicly. Like,
I mean, here's the thing. I'm still a big fan of like anything that has happened to you is your story to own and your story to tell. And if people treat you like shit, you deserve to tell that fucking story. Yeah. It holds people accountable, but you also deserve to tell that story whenever you're ready. So who knows? Maybe one day I'll be ready. Maybe one day I won't. Perfect. I'm just kind of playing by ear.
And for my instance, it took me obviously, I think it's the case with a lot of people, as like once you are out of that toxic cycle, to look back and be like, wow, that was really clear, like for a long time. But yeah, you just decide, hey, like for a manner of protection, because this is how we are wired as children, we need to make sure that we protect that relationship with our caregivers, because that's how we stay alive. So that's why we all internalize that message of like, I'm the problem. If you guys have listened for a long time, you'll remember Gaia's Blamable Face, that episode, where it was basically like I took on everyone else's issues, responsibilities, problems, because that was the way in which I survived my childhood.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that I was able to learn those, same as like for anyone who's like, wow, I kind of relate to that. It's amazing that we were able to learn how to survive in these toxic environments. However, part of like growing up and becoming a mature person and an adult is taking the things that benefited us in childhood that don't necessarily benefit us in adulthood and then letting them go. And not being like angry with yourself to be like, oh, I'm so fucking mad at like little me for like doing that, because you were merely surviving. And at whatever point you decide, hey, I no longer want to be in contact with that, and we'll kind of talk about like how it happens, then you get to like look back and put the anger and the frustration and the hurt and the shame that's associated with it on the correct person, which is your primary caregivers. I like to be really clear about that. And I don't want to say parents, because not everyone was raised by their parents. Some people are raised by like other family members. Some people are raised by fucking strangers. Some people are raised in foster care systems. So it's whoever your primary caregivers are, the way that they took care of you is how you are going to repeat those cycles in adulthood.
Yep.
And for me, ended up going no contact with my mom because, little side story here, I found out the level of the toxicity when I was tattooing a therapist, and it was just me and her in the shop. And she had said to me, like, my mom had popped by for a minute, and it was just a seemingly innocuous conversation. Like, I don't remember anything about this conversation, because to me, this was just another Tuesday, normal. She came by, barked some shit at me, and left. And that was very normal for like our relationship. And that therapist then asked for like a quick break. And we had talked about, you know, I'd tattooed them before, so I like knew them and considered them to be a friend. They weren't my therapist. That would be a conflict of interest. But we, they paused and were like, hey, can we just take a second? And they turned around because I was working on their arm, and they faced me and were like, hey, just so you know, the way that you were being treated is not okay. That is abusive. And because I was so enmeshed in that system and that cycle with my mom and with my family, and like toxic family cycles involve more than just you and the one parent. It involves enabling from other people. And to be very clear, if you're the child in a relationship, it involves enabling from every adult that lets it happen. So that's really big to me, because I think we oftentimes say, hey, I have one good parent and one shitty parent.
Yeah.
And that shitty parent is the one that does the most abusing. And then because we need to have like a savior in that situation, we allot one good parent, which tends to be the parent who is just the enabler.
Would you say that's like biologically in us to like try to find like one good and then side with it?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of safety. Like you're looking for any points. And what happens there is oftentimes children that are like traumatized, neglected, abused, all of that will take the absence of an attack as love. So when you have a parent who does not attack you, you think that that is the good parent because they are loving on you. Whereas in all actuality, yes, that other parent can absolutely be a victim of the like abuse as well, but they are an adult.
Yeah.
It is their responsibility to remove those children and put them in a safe environment. So in that sense, like, and don't get me wrong, that part of your healing journey takes a long time to get to, because at first it's trying to just disconnect yourself from that cycle of abuse.
Yep.
But anywho, she had said to me, like, that's not okay. And I had thought, like, this is the weirdest way ever to get clients. Like,
okay.
She's like pitching.
yeah, I was
something.
like, you're like pointing
So that
out
way you can
something
see
here
her.
so you can fucking get me to come see you. That was not true. She then very quickly explained, like, look, I can't see you because, like, obviously, like, we're friends and you're my tattoo artist, so I can't see you. However, I have a book for you that you might want to, like, read just in case you're interested. And if you ever want to chat, like, you know, not in a professional sense, I'm more than happy to, like, have a conversation with you, or I can put you, like, in contact with some groups. And that book was Will I Ever Be Good Enough? A book for daughters of narcissistic mothers. And that started me on the journey of, like, learning about narcissism. Because if you looked at my book list before then, it was all like anger management. Like, it was a lot of self-therapy because, once again, I'd internalized that I was the problem. And if you read my journals from that point, it was very much like, I need to figure out why I'm so angry. I need to stop being angry. I need to be more patient with her. If I could just fix myself, I could fix our relationship. And it was just taking all of that, like, just honestly hate that she had for me and internalizing that. And so I had hated so much about myself because I wasn't able to be the person that she decided that I would be, which is one of the things that happens when you have narcissistic or controlling parents or emotionally immature parents, is that they have this preconceived notion of who a child is. Mm-hmm. And then anytime you step outside of that, you get punished. Whether that's overt punishment and that's yelling, or it's covert punishment like the silent treatment, which is where you can find yourself in those cycles, like you were saying, finding yourself in cycles where you're repeating that. So, like, that was something, I'm just going to be very candid here, be very vulnerable. That was something that I realized about last year with my relationship with Caboose, was that we were repeating that cycle of, if he didn't like something, he would naturally, because he is an avoidant person when it comes to conflict, or at least he was at that point, would then just become really silent and go off and essentially sulk. And that would trigger me to be in that place of, like, fawning, trying to make things better. And so even though overall our relationship was good, in points of conflict, we absolutely repeated that trauma cycle of him stonewalling and me fawning. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to look at that as, like, hey, that first primary problem came from my primary caregivers, but then how does that, like, continue on to other relationships? Mm-hmm. So it was a very long-winded way of, like, how I ended up starting to go no contact.
No, whatever. I mean, honestly, like, this is our podcast. We can do whatever. But I think it's important. Again, it gives a really good insight for people who have healthy relationships with their parents and may still fall under the line of belief that, like, well, you know, I could never do that. I can't imagine ever doing that. And I want to address that too, because we talked about it briefly at lunch. That might not be the best way to. That might just have to be an inside thought if you do know someone who. Yeah. That's not a speak it out loud kind of thought. Because it just a little bit rubs in the noses of people who don't have good relationships with their parents. Like, I'm glad that you have a good relationship with your parents, but when it comes to people and their relationship with their parents, just be very sensitive might be the word for it. Just be considerate to that. So now that we talked about, like, why people may or may not go no contact with their...
Can I talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so something that I think is a really important, like, aspect of, like, hey, I don't necessarily want to go no contact. Oh, right. I might go low contact. Mm-hmm. But the thing with, like, any sort of person, and I've talked about this in the past, if I'm not going to be friends with you in real life, having a blood relationship to you does not mean you get me.
Fuck yes, dude.
Doesn't work that way.
If I wouldn't let my friends treat me the way that, like, these people treat me, or the way that I wouldn't let my friends talk to me the way that I've been talked to, then, like, why would I allow that in my life?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that it's important to look at relationships and see if they're, the acronym for it is FOG. So if there's fear, obligation, and guilt. And if you are seeing people, whether it be a, you know, partner, a parent, a family member, a friend, whoever, if you are seeing them because there is fear, obligation, or guilt in there, then that's a problem. That's not a healthy relationship. Mm-hmm. one of my favorite sayings that comes from the podcast Insight is that I can leave without fear and return without judgment. And you should be able to do that in any and all relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really important to sit with the relationships you have and be like, oh, wow, am I able to show up fully as myself without fear of judgment? And am I able to go and have other friends, other relationships? Or is this person, like in my case, like it was well known that if my family did not like someone, they made that person like very uncomfortable and made them leave. Mm-hmm. Like they would make sure that you were not welcome and it was clear. And so that was something that like I always feared bringing people home for that, because like if my mom wasn't a fan of them, then they fucking knew it. And don't get me wrong, I fell into that toxic cycle because when I was in my early 20s, I would have said the same shit that was said to me, which was that she was my best friend. And she told everyone I was her best friend and I was her therapist and that we were incredibly close. And at that point, when I started on the journey of like learning about narcissistic like roles, I thought for sure that I was the golden child because I was like, oh, I could do no wrong. And that wasn't the case. I was the enmeshed child. I learned how to survive by staying closest to her. But any time that I stepped outside of that or disagreed with her or saw someone she didn't like or made a friend with someone, and heaven forbid I came with a new friend that was also not enamored, there was heavy punishment. So I learned to enmesh and act like and replicate those behaviors, A, because that was all I'd ever known and seen, and B, that was the only way I knew safety. And then it took me a long time of dismantling that for me to be able to like step away because I was financially enmeshed. I owned a business with her. And there was one point, like, just to give you just one glaring example of like the enmeshment and the way in which I was not allowed my own autonomy. I lived in a house that my brother had owned at that time. And I was like renting, paying rent when I could. It was the recession. We're tattoo artists. It was bad. And my mom sent me a message and was like, hey, your stepdad and I are going to move in 2 weeks. We're going to sell our house and we're going to move in there. And so we can all just live together. And I think I was 23 at the time. And like, it wasn't a question. It wasn't, hey, would it be okay? It was none of that. It was just, okay, we're all just going to live together. And then got very angry when I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not going to live with my parents again. And her reply to that was, well, I'm not saying that you're living with us. We would be moving in with you. That's totally normal. And did not care whatsoever about my feelings and my autonomy and my desire for independence, that I did not want to be in my 20s living with my parents, and saw absolutely nothing wrong with that because like my boundaries did not exist. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's like one of those indicators of if you're like, oh, wow, these kind of like resonate, then like, where are your boundaries? And can you say no to this person without fear?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like when people are pushed to the point of no contact, it's not something that is super lighty, a lighthearted decision. Sorry, I'm kind of stuttering because the ADHD is really bad. I'm focusing on different things all at once. But anyways, it's not a like spur of a moment decision. There's like years of abuse and wrongdoings and fear. And again, like that worry about saying no is something that's going to live inside me forever and something that I'll have to consciously work on and consciously like try my best to make sure that I don't fall back into this pattern of being afraid of saying no. And am I afraid to say no every time? Absolutely. Do I do it regardless now? Yes. But it's a conscious decision. And when people go no contact, again, it's not something to be taken lightly. If you want to be a supportive friend, partner, whatever, just know that like I think personally to me, the worst thing that you can do is convince them to try and make an amends. That is, or forgive. I can't justify it. I think that it's the worst thing that you can say to me personally, because it excuses, again, all of the years of pain that will live inside me and continue to live inside me for the rest of my life. So anyways, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
We're going on to how to go no contact. contact?
Yeah,
You wanna
I
talk
think
about that?
part of like understanding why people go no contact, obviously it is that case of like it is safer for that individual to not have their parents and or family members in their life, which is why people go no contact.
Mhm.
And maybe once again, maybe you have a great relationship, so that's hard for you to fathom.
Yeah.
Or like myself, you're just still enmeshed in the cycle. And so that's hard for you to fathom as well. Or it's a case of like you were saying, where people are like, I couldn't imagine. That's an inside thought. You keep it to yourself. You say it to someone else. Don't say it to that person.
Yeah.
But it is a slow process of building up the strength. It does not happen overnight. I did not have that. Like, I did not read that book and then instantly like, deuces, I'm good. I got that book when I was 24 and I moved away because moving for me was the only option. I had built up boundaries, and we'll talk about those in a second, for years, but realizing that the only way to get like free was to physically leave, and I moved cross country. And even then, sporadic contact will happen. I have built like luckily a group around me that like helps me with that. I randomly got a fucking card in the mail with like my new name, and it was just weird and gross, and I just threw it away. I was like, nope, no thank you. I'm not interested in this whatsoever. And so I think that it's about building those steps of, hey, I'm going to start building boundaries, and I'm going to start realizing that I can rely on myself. Because part of why like your parents have that, or your like primary caregivers have that power over you, is because they gaslight you for all those years that you can't trust yourself. Mm-hmm. And this is something we talk about a lot, is that like building self-trust. And if you are lucky enough to have like supportive people in your life, they can help remind you of the times that you are, hey, you are growing, you are like able to hold those boundaries, and they will also help respect those boundaries to give you those little safe areas to like test that.
Mm-hmm. I think that really resonates with me, because I particularly am very sensitive right now to, I guess, like judgment or critique when it comes to my taste in like people. And when I say I'm sensitive about it, like I have realized throughout the past like few months, even it's fairly new, that like I can trust myself when I know how someone's going to respond or react to a certain thing. I can trust myself now because I've proven myself right. Like I know that like, okay, great. So I am a good judge of like how things are going to play out. I am smart enough to do that. And to me personally, when it comes to like, I don't know, let's say choosing a new partner or whatnot, I'm very, very sensitive to any kind of critique or any kind of statement that makes me feel like I can't trust myself or that I need help, because I have built enough strength to do that. And when I get in my head about things, I tend to stay there for a while. And I tend to like get like kind of a warped view of things, and it's hard to find myself again. And so if you want to be supportive, again, like just know that like even if someone is, I don't know, making a mistake or whatnot, just be there for them. You know, don't punish them for not knowing any better. Just support them.
The same way that if you decide, hey, I want to stay in relationship with my abusive, neglectful, emotionally like shitty parents, that's on you. That's totally fine. I'm not here to tell you like, hey, you need to break up with your parents because they treated you like shit. But that being said, it is being conscious of people who have made that decision, because like people that essentially self-orphan do not do it on their own. I'm not like, man, you know what's great? I would love to not have a fucking relationship with a lot of my family, or to not be able to say, go to my grandmother's funeral for risk that my mother might be there, and it would create a scene and ruin that day for so many other people.
Totally.
I'm not able to go to a lot of family things because of that. And that's not, hey, yes, this is my choice, so like, good job me. I'm looking for like a slap on the back, or like, oh yeah, I feel bad for Lou because Lou doesn't have that. No, it's the fact that like, I did not choose this because it was the easiest option. I chose it because it was the first time in my life when I moved out here, was the first time that I realized that I could go through a period of time and not think about killing myself.
Mhm.
Because I was so depressed for so many years that I thought that that was completely normal, that people just thought about ending their lives like on the regular.
Mhm.
And so by the time I made that, like, hey, look, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to have a relationship. That's it. Done. I'm over with it. I'm moving away.
Mhm.
I'm going to just not contact and then continue the work, because it's not just a case of like, okay, no contact. Or for a lot of people, it comes down to like limited contact. And to be clear, that tends to happen before you go no contact anyway. I don't know many instances in which people have just been like, oh, done, over, that's it. It tends to be a like pulling back from the situation and getting more perspective on the situation. If you are very lucky, getting help. In my case, reading a shit ton of books, listening to a lot of therapists, and doing a lot of self-help. And then being able to finally have that no contact like realm. But the work doesn't stop there, because that's when we have to start like essentially working on who we are and what is our identity, because it is so common for people who have had a abusive relationship to not have that identity, especially because you develop identity in childhood. And like I said earlier, your parents decided this is the identity you're going to be. This is the job you're going to have. This is the person you're going to be. These are the clothes you're going to wear. This is what you're going to act like, what you're going to look like. This is it. Which is, if you're like, oh my God, I do that with my kids. Okay, now is the time to step back and realize that the beauty of parenting, and really the beauty of being in a relationship with all people, is not that you have an idea of who this person is. It's that you get the joy of watching this person become more and more of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in all relationships. That's like the beauty of like our friendship, is that like we've been friends now for 6 years and you continue to surprise me. And I learn new things all the time, because you are not one preconceived notion that I have in my mind of this is what Callista's like. This is what they like. This is what she fucking enjoys. This is like what she hates. No, it's that we all grow and evolve and change. Your kids will do the same thing. So
Yes.
just because your kid had like a favorite thing when they were 2 does not mean they're going to have that favorite thing for the rest of their life. And understanding that like parenting, and that comes from parenting yourself as well, but parenting is the joy of watching someone grow, but letting them become their own person.
Absolutely.
That was my tyrant. Sorry.
No, it was good. It was amazing. I don't know. I think that I hope that this reaches the right people, and I hope that people take away from it. I really do feel like we would be so much better off knowing that if we just, the reason why our relationship is successful is because we've allowed a space in which you can grow however you want to grow. There was a point in time where you were considering having a child. And like,
For
obviously,
like a month, because I was ovulating.
yes, I'm not saying, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying like when you had told me about it, I was supportive, because like, even though like we had said like, you know, I say we as if we're a couple, we're fucking not. Don't make it fucking weird.
Well, okay, to be clear, we are a couple, but we're not a couple in a romantic sense.
No, we are partners.
We are partners.
business bitches.
Yes, we are life
Business
partners.
bestie bitches.
Platonic life partners.
Platonic life partners. You are my fucking person. And like I knew that like if you were to have a child, I would be really involved in that kid's life.
Yeah.
Um,
You would never talk to me when I was pregnant, though.
I mean, I would just have to do this and talk.
Which
to
would be
you.
terrible, because I would constantly be like, touch it,
No.
touch it, touch the belly.
I can't. For those of
Touch
you
it.
who don't know, I'm incredibly weird about pregnancy. It's super hard for me. I will faint if I think about me getting pregnant. I can't do it. And like looking at pregnant women, like it freaks me the fuck out. This one loves it. I love
do.
that for you. When I see pregnant women, I get terrified. I get squeamish
Why?
and scared.
It's an adorable alien growing inside of you.
That's exactly why.
But that half that alien is you.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I don't want any part of that. I'm okay. In another life, I feel like in this past life, or maybe there's something intrinsic that I know in my brain. I must have died in childbirth or something. I don't fucking know.
If it's a past life, there's a high likelihood of that.
Exactly. There you go.
'Cause, yeah.
Yeah. Or my body's just like built in programming is saying like, this is not something that we need to go down. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But Any whoozles, the reason why our relationship is successful and why we reparent ourselves and, we like tend to be each other's like best friends and sometimes mothers and sometimes sisters. And
Yep,
sometimes
you are my
whatever.
mother and my daughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a
And
really good mom too.
thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And I'm really proud of you as my daughter.
You know what? You are a
Yeah.
phenomenal mother, so thank you for that.
Thanks.
And it's weird to call you my daughter, but sure, whatever. My kid.
yeah, there you go. I'm
Yeah.
your kid.
Yeah, Lubot when she's
Mhm.
full toddler mode crying because you hit your fucking head on the
Dude, I thought I
hamper.
was going to go blind. I was so scared.
But again, the thing is like, let's just say your kid is a plant. Your job is to keep it alive and keep it growing. Don't turn a succulent into an orchid. That's not your job.
Mm-mm.
Just let it be.
Yep.
Let it do its thing. What else do we have to hit? I did want to kind of talk about the stigma of, again, we touched on a little bit how people tend to think, well, family is everything. You shouldn't go no contact. You should be forgiving. People aren't perfect, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any room for that in my life. I don't have room for people who are going to try to convince me to forgive and forget. I don't have room for people who are going to try and tell me that family is everything. When again, like, I'm sorry, but these statements were like built to keep people in abusive situations. I'm not going to do that.
Yes. If you understand the historical context of it, it is because way back when we needed, and we still need people to survive, but we needed each other to survive. So we needed to keep that family pack mentality. And then even through like agricultural history, we needed to be able to take, and at that point, women didn't have their rights. Children didn't have any rights. You were sold, traded, whatever. You were just property. And so that idea of like always supporting your family and being with your family and like the whole blood is thicker than water, which is horribly misquoted, is because there was a direct benefit to the survival of our species. But that does not mean it's okay. The same way that like we have this weird preconceived notion that like women were meant to stay home and take care of like the house, which we know when we look back historically beyond the last 150 years where we decided to write that as history, but we actually start going further back. We're like, actually, none of that's being proven to be true. That this is a very much just Western idea, and it is a thing that directly benefits the patriarchy, which is why we believe that. Because we've been taught that. It's that same bullshit of like, pink is for girls, blue is for boys that never existed until the turn of the century. And that just came into like advertising, marketing, and then it completely went away. And then back in the 80s, they said, you know what? We need to boost up consumerism. So we want to go ahead and promote this idea. So that way you cannot have hand-me-downs going different gendered. So when you look at it in that larger scheme, it's all propaganda. That's it. And so that whole family is first, family is best. Those are the best relationships. They've known you the longest. Well, fun fact, I'm not the same person I was when I was a fucking child. So how much do you really know about me? And if you're not taking the time to get to know me now,
Absolutely.
then you don't know me.
Absolutely. I think I am huge on that too. Like parenting doesn't stop when your kid turns 18. That's a rest of your life kind of gig. And it's
Yep.
up to you for the rest of your life and their lives to make the effort to grow that relationship. Because again, it's going to be changing. The beauty about being human is the fact that we change our minds on things.
Yep.
We do stupid shit and then we come back from it. Then we do stupid shit again and then we hopefully learn.
Yeah.
And we like different things. We realize different things about ourselves. We realize that we don't want to live a certain way or we want to continue or whatnot. That's part of the beauty of it. But if you're not there to actively witness it and cultivate it,
And support it.
then like what's a relationship then? What is it?
I think that can kind of help with the like, okay, so my friend is no contact and we're coming up on the holidays. How do I support them? And like one of the things that we kept talking about over lunch was listening without judgment. So we have that preconceived idea that family is first and family is best. And that like you could never do that to your kids. Or the one that I hear the most is, I can't imagine if my kids did that to me. Well, you know what, Martha? If you were a good fucking mother, your kids wouldn't do that to you.
Period.
Because it still stands to me that one of my favorite statements about it is that the relationship that your children have with you when they are adults is a report card on how you treated them when they were children.
Absolutely.
And so if you want to have a relationship with them for the rest of their life, learn how to apologize to them and learn how to validate them. And so you're going to hurt them. Like we talk about even the best parents are going to send their kids to therapy one day. That's totally fine. You're going to hurt them, but giving the ability to say, I'm sorry, or please tell me that.
Yep.
Tell me, I want to hear your side because I want to know how to make repairs. And also just doing some work on your own, because we can say oh, well, that's how it was when, you were growing up. Those were just the times. Yeah, well, it was okay for men to beat their wives. Doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because that was culturally acceptable does not mean that it was morally okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that listening without judgment, but having curiosity. And also understanding that if they don't want to talk about it, if there's topics that's hey, that's too painful, I don't want to give that example,
Yeah.
or I don't want to get into this, it is a very painful thing. So not everyone wants to talk about it, but it's just being there to support. And I think something that you would mention around Mother's Day
Mm-hmm.
is the I forgot what it was, but basically not coming at us with the oh, this day's really hard, huh?
I would
Because-
much rather forget that it's even a holiday,
Yeah.
honestly. And so it's hard because it's out of good. I think it's out of a good intent of hey, just reaching out because I'm thinking of you. Thank you for thinking of me, but also I'm the kind of person where I'd rather just not talk about it because it's just another day to me. I don't have to get I've already been getting constant reminders that it's a day that's coming up through
Every
ads.
fucking advertisement.
Exactly. And so I don't need another reminder on the day of actually that it's happening. And so that's part of listening to your friends and actually listening without judgment. And that's part of creating a safe space for your friends or partners or whatnot that are in no contact with their family members.
And if you're not sure, ask. Just be
ask, yeah.
hey, I know that Mother's Day is coming up. How are you feeling about it? Instead of
Yeah.
assuming, because I think that's the part that kills me is the people that reached out that were oh, I'm so sorry for you today. And I was oh, well, fuck me, dude. Thanks. That's a bit weird. I don't know how to reply to that. But instead just being hey, how are you feeling with Mother's Day coming up? Because then that gives me the space to tell you and also gives me the space that if I don't want to say, be I'd rather not talk about it. Then and you're not going to essentially re-traumatize me on one of the shittiest days of the year
There you go.
for people who either, for whatever reason, can't be mothers, don't have mothers, whether voluntarily or not, whatever it is, it can be a really shitty day.
Yeah, it's a very complicated day.
Yeah,
For a lot
I
of
feel
people.
a lot of holidays are because a lot of holidays are family centric.
Yeah.
And that's where reparenting yourself, whether that's in our case, I said Happy Mother's Day to you because you've been a dope ass mom for me. And I said Happy Mother's Day to myself because I am now the person that I would have wanted to raise me. So when you said, when little baby Lou is in full force, I meet my inner child with a lot of compassion and understanding. And I try to do the same with other people's inner child.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think,
We're on the what now?
yeah.
If
so,
you
okay. So yeah. So you've gone no contact or low contact, wherever you're at in this journey, or you just know people that are, what now?
What do you do now? For me, since I'm fresh into it, I think one of the biggest things for me is establishing the boundary. So I established you have to let me come to you. I don't know if that day will ever happen. I don't know if it'll be a day from now, a week from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, but don't come to me. And holding that boundary is a lot harder than stating it. Holding any boundary is always harder than stating it because that's where you come into play. That's where your actions come into play. That's where you are responsible for your boundary because when you set a boundary, it's kind of confused when people hear boundary. They think that oh, it's up to the other person to not do this. Yes and no. If that person respects your boundary, that's great. But it's not a steadfast, they are going to. When they don't respect your boundary, what are you going to do to respond to that?
Yeah.
Holding your boundary means separating yourself from that instance. So holding it means that like I've blocked them. I'm not gonna talk to them.
Holding a boundary. Can I clarify that?
Yeah,
really fast?
absolutely.
A boundary is never about the other person. It's about what you will and will not tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone continues to violate my boundaries, then I'm deciding to be in a relationship with them. That's on me, not on them.
Yep.
Boundaries are never about the other person. They're about how we interact with them.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm really clear on that, to be like, you can't tell, because if you just tell people like, don't do that, that's being controlling. However, it can be, I don't want to be in your presence if you're going to discuss that, and then removing yourself from that presence. That is not punishing of them. That is being clear of, I'm not comfortable with this topic. I'm going to remove myself from it.
Yeah, I'm out.
And then I think we've talked a little bit about reparenting, but I just want to go into some specifics because I think that like inner child work is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got a couple like really good podcasts that I'll throw in the show notes for this, but reparenting yourself is sitting with your like inner child and asking them what kind of parent you wanted as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then how are you able to be that now? Because like, yes, you might be fucking 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, doesn't fucking matter. You still carry your inner child with you. You are all the previous ages you have ever been and the previous iterations of yourself. And if you do not help that inner child, it's really hard to heal those wounds that are caused in childhood. So like the instance of not being able to trust yourself in relationships with other people, not having good judgment of other people,
Mm-hmm.
that was laid in childhood because it benefited your like family unit
Yep.
to teach you, hey, I'm not good at choosing friends. I'm not good at choosing who I socialize with, so they'll do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, or like in a very common one that goes across to remove it from you, a very common one is not trusting your own thoughts or memories, where we're like, oh, I don't know that that's accurate, is because we get told a lot in a toxic family cycle. Well, that's how you're choosing to remember it, or that didn't happen like that.
Yep.
So you learn as a child to be like, okay, I cannot trust myself. I cannot trust my own thoughts, feelings, or beliefs, or they'll tell you like, you shouldn't feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're taught that, you don't know how, which means going back to that childhood version of yourself and accepting that like what happened to you is what happened to you. Now, whether or not they tell you different, that is how your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are around that situation. And then sitting with what you would have wanted to hear. So if it's a case of like, if I'm scared, I don't want to actually, you know what, a perfect example? I've told you guys this before. I'll just use it again real fast. A perfect example of that is that when I'm high and I'm super paranoid, because that's just part of being high, I use that as a great time to reparent small me. So instead of like the normal case of like, we've got a really high bed and I'll be like, oh God, what if something's underneath the bed? That's super sketchy, scary. I will then be like, okay, fucking adult Lou, let's calm little baby Lou's like fears around what if something's underneath the bed. I've watched a lot of horror movies. I think we all share that fear anyway. So then I will say, okay, what would little me have wanted in that moment? Little me would not have wanted what I got, which was like, why are you afraid? Don't be ridiculous. Like very like demeaning.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I'm like, okay, so what's underneath the bed is probably more afraid of us than we are of it. So let's just greet it with like love and compassion, because that's how we would want to be greeted if somebody was scared of us. And let's just get curious. And I will, no lie, get on my hands and fucking knees and say out loud, it's okay. If something's underneath there, I'm sorry if I scare you. You don't have to attack me because you're also scared. I won't attack you. You won't attack me. And that is like just one example, because what it does is it regulates my entire fucking nervous system. And then it also lets little me that's scared of like a boogeyman underneath the bed, it lets that part of me know, hey, you can trust me. I'm safe. So then that childhood fear is gone, because then, and like, yeah, it'll come up every once in a while, but now very seldom am I like, oh God, I'm scared, because I'm just like, whatever, if there's something underneath there, we'll handle it. And so like little me knows that like adult me has me. And that's the part of like reparenting is like being the parent that you needed in childhood for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to look the same. Like, I'm not going to parent myself the way I'm going to parent you
Mm-hmm.
because you have different like wants, desires, needs
Totally.
than I have. But it's that reparenting yourself to know that like I trust me. I trust my judgment in people. I'm always learning because I'm wrong about a lot of shit. But I also know that like that's a lesson I had to learn because I grew up in a household where if you were wrong, you were punished.
Mhm.
One of the worst things you could do was be wrong, which meant even when you met me and I was very fresh in the being no contact, I was hard fast on like, this is a fact. Nah, bitch, that's a feeling. That's a feeling. That's
Oh,
not a
straight
fact.
up. I think I called you out once
Mhm.
on that, like very early in our friendship. Like you state your opinions like they're
Mhm.
facts. And
Yep.
it's hard for people to have their opinion
Yeah.
when you state it like that.
And I had to learn to go and like figure out where that came from, which came
Yes.
from childhood
Mhm.
in the fact that like, if you stated something, it better be fucking fact. I
Mhm.
say that in quotations. Otherwise, you weren't safe because if there was the slightest bit of weakness around something, then you were laying yourself open for attack.
Yeah. And I to play off of that, I think like when you talk about reparenting and what now after being no contact, it's reparenting is a great way to deprogram any like toxic belief that has been fed to you and has been like wired in your brain. Like, for example, for me, it was more so a case of like I had such low self-esteem, such low confidence, so, like really like low perception of myself when it came to work or any of my achievements. Because when it came to like working hard and achieving things, that was just shit you were supposed to do. Great, you did it, move the fuck on. And so now I'm trying to slow down and actually enjoy my achievements, try to give myself the credit where it's due. And that's taken a lot of deprogramming. And through that, reparenting is a great way to deprogram. With that being said, you do need to be very patient with yourself. That is a key thing. Try not to fall under the case of like, well, what the fuck, I should be farther in my healing journey, whatever. It took you this long to get away. Take your time to get back to yourself.
And to be clear, it'll be forever.
Yeah, it'll be a
That's
work in
the
progress
thing. That's
forever.
the beauty of like being human is that you will forever change and grow
Mhm.
and just find different like iterations of yourself. I guess the one last thing that I want to make sure is that, okay, so we're no contact. We notice all these like toxic patterns. We notice like where we lay in these toxic patterns.
Mhm.
And then suddenly you've learned all this that you're like, oh no, I've been like manipulated and I've been a victim or I have manipulated people. I don't want to do this anymore. And then you start looking at all of your other relationships and you're like, oh my God, all of them have these like really toxic shit going on with them.
Yeah.
That's normal. That's completely normal.
Yeah.
It does not mean you have to cut everyone off. Like I said earlier, Caboose and I noticed these really toxic patterns around conflict that we had, which were the same as like what we both had in childhood. That we were just on opposite sides of them. And I cried over the fact that I was like, oh my God, it's just like we got together because our traumas lined up. What the fuck? And now because we are both acknowledging that, we're able to forge a new path. But once again, lots of patience because we will fall back into that primary, like that first messaging that we had.
Mhm.
And so like before it would be hours of that. And then we'd finally reach like, she's aware she lives with us. And now we will like start to notice that we're going to that way and then be like, nope. Let's actually learn or go back to what we're learning now, which is healthy conflict. And so you can change those patterns of behavior, but know that, yeah, you probably have them in a lot of your relationships because we repeat those patterns. We repeat the patterns from childhood. So if a lot of your relationships look unhealthy, there's a reason and it's okay. And that's that being patient and having grace with yourself of like, hey, we're not saying cut everyone off. I'm not even saying cut your parents off if you don't want to.
Mhm.
But that being said, there's a piece that comes with it that cannot be articulated.
Choose your hard friends.
Yep.
My biggest thing is it's going to be hard to stay. It's also going to be incredibly hard to leave. I agree with the piece.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see who I grow and who I become. Now that when it comes to like parental things, I feel like it's the easiest way to trigger and shock my whole body. And my nervous system is just shocked and fucked over the smallest little interaction. So I'm excited to see who I am without that like electric shock coming through my whole nervous system and shaking things up for an extended amount of time. And that's the piece that I'm excited about. Am I sad? Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's a quiet sadness. There's a grief to it. There's a grief in being happier about how things turned out. And now that I'm away. But like I said, there's no wrong way to do it. Choose your hard. It's going to be hard either way. But own it. Fucking lean into it. Whatever decision you make, fucking own it. So that's all I had to say.
So on that note, what's your win for the week?
Oh, my win for the week is recording this podcast. It is definitely spooky. Again, like coming out into the public world and saying, "Hey, I'm freshly no contact." I haven't been very public about it. This is the only point of contact, point of reference, or like just I don't know, thing of me saying it. So that's my win for the week. What's your win?
My win is today is my anniversary with Caboose.
Hooray! Happy anniversary.
So we are celebrating 13 years of marriage. And we are going to couples therapy in like an hour and a half. So
crush it, you guys.
And I'm really excited because I don't know why I'm really excited to go to couples therapy on our anniversary, but it just feels really like cute to be like, all right, let's go like see what we can uncover in our relationship.
Yep, absolutely.
On our anniversary. So,
hell yeah.
So on that note, we will see you guys back next week with hopefully not as heavy of an episode. Maybe. I don't know.
We'll see what
we
happens.
never know what we're going to talk about either.
Yeah, we will see. Thank you so much for listening. If you've made it this far, we appreciate the hell out of you. Let us know if you liked what we had to say. Let us know if you have any insight, anything else that you'd like to add for those who would like to go no contact.
Or low contact.
So thanks, y'all.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye. 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 Bye.